For the longest time in AI, the motto was pretty simple. Bigger is always better. But that whole story is being flipped on its head. We are right in the middle of a massive shift, a move towards something smaller, way faster, and much more focused. So let's jump right in and see how these small models are causing a huge disruption.
And look, this isn't some pie-in-the-sky prediction for 10 years down the road. We're talking just a few years from now. The analysts are seeing it. The trend is undeniable. The future is all about specialization, with companies choosing smaller, task-specific models over the big, do-everything ones.
And here's why this is such a big deal. It's not just about saving a few bucks. This shift is laying the groundwork for the entire next generation of AI. These small language models, or SLMs, they're the engines that are going to power the smart, autonomous agents that everyone's trying to build.
All right, so here's the game plan. First, we'll cover the basics. What in the world is an SLM, and when should you use one? Then, we're going to peek under the hood and see how these things are actually made. After that, we'll get into 4 really powerful design patterns for using them with AI agents. And finally, we'll look at who's already using them out in the wild.
All right, let's kick things off with the big question. When we talk about a small language model, what exactly do we mean? Think of it like this. An SLM is a specialist. It's a really compact version of those huge AI models we all know. It's built on the exact same foundation, that transformer architecture, but it has way fewer parameters, which are kind of like the neurons in its brain. Because it's so much leaner, it's incredibly fast, uses less power, and can even run right on your phone or laptop. The trade-off? It's an expert in one specific thing, not a generalist that tries to do everything.
So how do you get one of these smaller models? Well, you don't usually build them from scratch. It's more like the art of shrinking a giant. Let's look at the 3 main ways this is done.
First up, we have quantization. The core idea here is to make the model's brain more efficient, but using simpler numbers. So, instead of storing all its information with these super precise 32-bit values, we compress them down to 8-bit or even 4-bit integers. This massively cuts down the model's size and makes it run way faster, usually without hurting its performance on its specific job. It's absolutely key for getting AI to run on smaller hardware.
Okay, next up is pruning. The best way to think about this is like, pruning a tree. You start with this big, dense neural network. Pruning is the art of carefully snipping away all the weakest connections, the parts that don't really help get to the right answer. Once you've trimmed away the fat, you just fine-tune the model a little bit to make sure it's still accurate. The result is a much leaner, much more efficient AI.
And the third technique is distillation, and this one is really cool. You basically use a huge, powerful teacher model to train a small student model. But the teacher doesn't just give the student the final answer. It explains its reasoning. It gives the why behind the answer in the form of probabilities. The little student model is then trained to copy that reasoning process, not just the answer. It's an amazing way to create a compact model that has the wisdom of a much larger one.
Okay, so we've got the what and the how. Now for the million-dollar question. How do they really stack up against the big guys, the LLMs? Let's do a direct comparison.
And wow, when you put them side by side, the differences are just night and day. SLMs are working with parameters in the millions to low billions. LLMs, we're talking high billions, even trillions. And that size difference has a huge impact on everything else. SLMs are blazing fast, they need very little compute power for each request, and they're way cheaper to train and run. LLMs are much slower and cost a fortune to operate. It's really that classic trade-off, the brute force, general-purpose power of an LLM versus the nimble, focused efficiency of an SLM.
So this efficiency, this power of focus, it brings us to one of the most exciting applications out there, AI agents. It turns out SLMs are a perfect match for how agents work. Let's dig into 4 powerful patterns for putting them together.
First up is what we call smart routing. And really, it's just common sense. Use the right tool for the job. You set up a simple little traffic cop that sends all the simple, high-volume stuff, like answering FAQs, to your cheap, fast SLM. Only the really tricky, creative, or never-before-seen problems get sent up the chain to the expensive LLM. It's all about optimizing for both cost and performance.
Next, you've got the pipeline pattern. Think of it like an assembly line for AI. The SLM does the first high-volume step. It does the grunt work. Maybe it filters a bunch of data, writes a rough first draft, or just flags things that look weird. Then it passes its work down the line to the LLM, which does the final high-value step of refining it or providing a really deep explanation. It makes complex jobs way more efficient. Pattern 3 is the parallel check, and this one is all about speed and quality, which is the holy grail, right? The moment a request comes in, the SLM shoots back an answer almost instantly, so the user never has to wait. But at the exact same time, in the background, the LLM is reviewing that answer to make sure it's perfect. So you get the best of both worlds, the lightning-fast response of the SLM with the quality guarantee of the LLM.
And our last pattern? Think of the SLM as a super smart, cost-saving gatekeeper. It takes every request first and comes up with an answer, but it also gives a confidence score, basically how sure it is that its answer is right. If that score is high, great, you use the fast, cheap answer. But if the score is low, the request automatically gets escalated to the big LLM for a more thorough look. The real magic is dialing in that confidence level to perfectly balance your costs and quality.
So these patterns, they aren't just cool technical tricks. They unlock some serious, game-changing advantages for businesses. Let's look at 3 of the biggest ones.
First, and this one is absolutely huge for so many companies, data privacy. Because SLMs are so small, you can run them on your own servers, on-premise, or even on a single laptop. This means your sensitive data never ever has to leave your control and be sent to some third-party API. For anyone in healthcare, finance, or law, this isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a non-starter. This changes everything.
Advantage number 2 is all about the money. We're talking about a complete flip in the cost equation. If you have a task that you need to do millions of times a day, calling an LLM API gets crazy expensive fast. But if you're running your own SLM, the cost for each one of those calls drops to basically 0. This makes AI practical for all sorts of things where it was just too expensive before, like analyzing every customer review or processing every invoice in real time.
And the third big win here is specialization. Fine-tuning a giant LLM is a massive, multi-million-dollar project. But an SLM? That's a different story. It's much faster and way cheaper. This means you can create a whole army of specialists. One model trained only on your internal documents to be a Q&A expert. Another one trained on your code to help your developers. And another one trained to perfectly route all your customer support tickets.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But who's actually doing this? Well, the biggest names in tech are already all in. Let's look at a couple of quick examples.
Take Uber, for example. They're embedding SLMs all over their systems. They use these small, fast models for all the high-frequency jobs, like cleaning up what a user types in, polishing the final answer before it's shown, and even rewriting queries behind the scenes to get better results. And they do all of this while keeping response times super low, which is absolutely critical for their business.
And get this, even OpenAI, the company that basically started the whole bigger is better craze, is a huge proponent of using SLMs. They actually recommend using small models as guardrails for their big models. They use them for all the critical checks, like filtering out unsafe questions, figuring out what a user really wants, and making sure the final answer is actually relevant. It's a perfect real-world example of that pipeline pattern we just talked about.
So, let's bring it all home. We've seen the what, the how, and the why. SLMs are a fundamental change in how we think about AI, making it more efficient, more secure, and more specialized. This isn't just a trend, it's an acceleration. Small models are, without a doubt, causing a massive disruption. And that means the question for every single organization out there is no longer if you should adopt this technology, it's how.